All right, let's dive into something pretty wild. Today, we're looking at a historical theory that is so out there it makes you question the very timeline of our past. We're going to break down one source's analysis that suggests a huge chunk of history might not have happened at all.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if 3 whole centuries of the past were just made up? That is the absolutely bonkers mystery we're unpacking today.
So, we're talking about a 300-year slice of the Eastern Roman Empire. Now, the official story, the one in the history books, paints this time as remarkably stable. A long, quiet stretch of peace. But let's be real, in the cutthroat world of Roman politics, does that really sound plausible?
So, was it actually an era of peace? Or, as the source we're examining today suggests, was it something else entirely? A forgery, cooked up to fill a gap in time that was never really there to begin with.
Okay, so the first clue, according to this theory, is something that just jumps out when you look at the data. It's a huge statistical anomaly in the lives, and more importantly, the deaths of Roman emperors. It's a pattern that seems, well, a little too neat.
So get this, before the year 337, and then again after the year 602, being the Roman emperor was frankly a terrible career choice. You were almost guaranteed to be assassinated. It was just part of the job description. But in that 300-year window right in the middle, the source points out that almost every single emperor died of natural causes, a sudden 3-century break from a consistently bloody tradition. It's odd, right?
So, how in the world do you explain this suspiciously quiet period? Well, the theory proposes a pretty radical explanation. The history itself is a fake.
And this is the heart of what's called the phantom time theory. The idea is that this 300-year period isn't real. It's an invention, a story that was, and I'm quoting the source here, conspicuously embellished just to pad out the official timeline.
But how do you even invent 300 years of history? I mean, where do you get the people, the events? The theory claims it was done by taking the lives of real historical figures and literally splitting them in two, creating an original and a double to populate this phantom era.
And this is where the theory really gets interesting. The main evidence for this whole idea rests on the so-called doubled emperors, pairs of rulers who have the same name, but let's just say they have very, very different endings.
Here's how it supposedly worked. You take one emperor's biography and you chop it in half. The nice, peaceful part of his story becomes the original emperor, who dies of old age right inside that phantom 300-year period. Then, all the violent, messy, dramatic parts of his life get handed off to a double, who conveniently shows up centuries later and gets a really brutal ending.
And to back this up, the source we're looking at points to 2 really specific examples of this alleged pattern. The emperors named Anastasios and Justinian. First up, we've got a guy named Anastasios, and you gotta love this. His name literally means the resurrected. How perfect is that for a theory about a historical figure who basically gets to live twice in the official timeline?
So, on one hand, you have Anastasios I. He rules during that peaceful phantom period, and yep, he dies of natural causes. Then, bam, 200 years later, Anastasios II pops up, and his story is the total opposite. He gets kicked off the throne and is later executed. It's the exact pattern the theory predicts.
But it gets even weirder. The source digs into the details of Anastasios II's life. After he was overthrown, he supposedly lived for 3 years in a monastery, an echo of the 3 years of Jesus' ministry. And he was executed after trying to reclaim his throne, a clear parallel to Jesus' claim to be a king, which also led to his execution. The theory suggests these details weren't random. They were added for symbolic punch.
All right, let's move on to the second big example that the source material uses to make its case: the 2 Justinians.
And you guessed it, we see the same exact pattern. Justinian I has this long, famous, and successful reign during the Phantom period and dies peacefully in his bed. But his namesake, Justinian II, lives one of the most brutal lives of any emperor. He's overthrown, he's mutilated, he actually claws his way back to power for a bit, only to be executed in the end.
The source also zooms in on the later Justinian's coins. He was the very first emperor to put an image of Jesus on his money, and the inscription was incredibly bold. It read, "Our Lord Jesus Christ, King of Kings." For supporters of this theory, that's just another detail that seems too specific, too convenient, to be part of a real history.
So let's just lay this all out, because the repetition is really the crucial point here. In both of these cases, Anastasios and Justinian, the original emperor who lives before 602 dies a natural death. And in both cases, the double, who shows up after 602, suffers a violent, dramatic, made-for-Hollywood end. For the people who believe this theory, this isn't a coincidence. It's the blueprint for a forgery.
Now look, the point of this explainer isn't to say this theory is right or wrong. It's to dig into the questions it raises, to make us think about how we even know what we know about the past. And it really leaves you with one big nagging thought. We always say history is written by the victors, right? Well, who's supposed to check their work?